I never imagined that my world could shatter in the space of a heartbeat. That a single moment could take everything I believed in, everything I had built, and reduce it to nothing but a pile of broken illusions. My husband, Daniel, was the kind of man who turned heads. Even at 40, he was effortlessly charming, his confidence an unspoken promise that he knew exactly what he wanted in life. He had the kind of presence that made women pause, men envy, and me, love him. For years, I had lived in the quiet comfort of our marriage, trusting in the life we had created together. And then, in the cruelest twist of fate, I found out how wrong I had been. It started simply, innocently. A casual plan to meet my best friend, Anna, for coffee. We had been close since college, the kind of friends who could sit in silence for hours and still understand each other completely. Though she was a few years older than me, our bond had only grown stronger over time. She had her daughter, Lilia, young, just before turning 18, and raised her on her own for the most part. Lilia was a beautiful girl, 22 now, with the kind of youthful energy that made people gravitate toward her. She was sweet, a little wild at times, but I had never once considered her a threat. That afternoon, Anna and I met at our favorite cafe, the one with the delicate floral wallpaper and the scent of fresh pastries in the air. We sat by the window, sipping our cappuccinos, catching up on life. "You should come over," I said, smiling. "We haven't had a proper dinner together in ages. Daniel will be home, and I'm making that lasagna you love." Anna's face lit up. "That sounds perfect. It'll be nice to catch up properly." Looking back, I wonder if I had sensed something in the air that day, some subtle warning written in the spaces between words. Maybe it was the way Anna hesitated for just a second before agreeing, or the way she glanced at her phone more often than usual. But I brushed it aside. Why wouldn't I? By the time we arrived at my apartment, it was nearly evening. I unlocked the door, laughing as I recounted an old story from our college days. And then we stepped inside. And the world collapsed. The first thing I noticed was the sound. The unmistakable, skin-crawling sound of hushed whispers, breathless laughter. A moan, low and intimate. My breath caught in my throat. I turned my head, and there they were. Daniel. Lilia. Tangled together on the couch, his hands on her bare skin, her fingers in his hair. Their bodies intertwined in a way that shattered every illusion I had ever held. For a long, impossible second, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Anna gasped beside me, her voice strangled, broken. Lilia screamed, scrambling to cover herself, the color draining from her face. Daniel, my husband, my partner, my love, froze, his body stiffening, his eyes locking onto mine in wide-eyed horror. Time fractured around me. My chest tightened, and suddenly, I couldn't breathe. No. No, this couldn't be real. But it was. It was right there, in front of me, undeniable and grotesque in its truth. Anna staggered back, her face contorted in disbelief, her voice nothing more than a whisper. "Lilia, what have you done?" Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because what could he possibly say? Nothing. Because there was nothing, that could ever make this right. The room felt smaller, suffocating, like the walls were pressing in on me, on Anna, on this monstrous betrayal that had been laid bare before us. The air was thick with the remnants of their intimacy, and I wanted to claw my way out of my own skin. Daniel finally moved. He grabbed for his shirt, his hands fumbling, his breath uneven. I held up a hand. "Don't." My voice wasn't my own. It was something hollow, something distant, something that belonged to a woman whose world had just crumbled beneath her feet. Lilia sat there, frozen in place, wide-eyed, her body partially covered by the throw blanket she had yanked over herself in desperation. Her lips parted, but whatever excuse or explanation she had died in her throat. Anna was trembling beside me. "Lilia, how could you?" I turned to my best friend then, and what I saw in her eyes mirrored my own agony. This wasn't just a betrayal of a marriage. It was the kind of wound that bled through 2 lives, 2 families. Daniel finally found his voice. "Please, just let me." "No," I snapped, my voice suddenly sharper, cutting through the thick, vile air. "Don't you dare say another word, Daniel." His name tasted like poison in my mouth. Lilia, young, reckless, naive, looked between us like a deer caught in the path of an oncoming truck. "It's not." "Not what?" I spat, turning on her, my pain bleeding into anger. "Not what it looks like." "Don't insult me, Lilia. I have eyes." Anna let out a broken, shaking breath. "How long?" Her voice was raw, pleading. "How long has this been going on?" I didn't know if I wanted the answer. I wasn't sure if my heart could bear it. Daniel raked a hand through his hair. "A few months. A few months." That was all it took for him to burn down 13 years of marriage. My stomach twisted, nausea rolling through me in violent waves. The room blurred at the edges, but I forced myself to stand there, to face the ugliness of the truth. Anna pressed her fingers against her lips, her body shaking. "My daughter," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You did this with my daughter." Daniel had the audacity to look ashamed. "I never meant for this to happen." I laughed. A broken, bitter sound. "You never meant for it to happen?" I repeated, tasting the cruelty of the words. "That's what you say when you accidentally break a glass, Daniel. Not when you're sleeping with a 22-year-old girl." Lilia flinched, her eyes shimmering with something. Regret? Guilt? But I didn't care. "You were like an uncle to her," Anna said, her voice shaking. "She grew up around you. How could you?" Daniel exhaled, his shoulders sagging. "I don't expect you to understand." I snapped then. The weight of it all was unbearable, the grief, the rage, the disgust twisting into something sharp and uncontrollable. I grabbed the first thing I could, an empty wine glass from the coffee table, and hurled it at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Just like us." Lilia let out a startled cry. Anna gasped. Daniel flinched. "Get out," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Get out of my house." Daniel hesitated. "Can we?" "No," my vision blurred with hot tears, but I refused to let them fall. "There is nothing to salvage here, Daniel. You made sure of that." Anna turned to Lilia, her voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. "You too. Go." Lilia's lower lip quivered. "Mom, please. Go." Anna's voice was steel now. Lilia hesitated for only a moment before she grabbed her clothes, dressing quickly, her face pale. She didn't dare look at me. Daniel stood there, still shirtless, still looking like he wanted to explain the inexplicable. I stepped forward, my fury burning through my grief. "If you don't walk out of that door in the next 5 seconds, I swear to God, I will make you regret it." Something in my voice must have told him I meant it, because for the first time, Daniel, the man who had once been my everything, looked afraid. And then he walked past me, past Anna, and out of the home we had built together. Lilia followed, her head bowed, her steps uncertain. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving a silence so deep it felt like a void. Anna and I stood there, 2 women whose lives had just been torn apart, staring at the empty space they left behind. And then, without warning, I sank to the floor. And I wept. Anna did too. And that was how we remained, 2 broken women, drowning in the wreckage of the men we had trusted. The house felt empty. Not physically, everything was still there. The furniture, the pictures on the walls, the remnants of a life that now felt like a lie. But the soul of it, the warmth that once made it a home, had been ripped away. Anna sat on the floor beside me, her face buried in her hands. Neither of us spoke. What words could possibly be enough? There was no undoing what we had seen, no erasing the image of Daniel and Lilia entangled on my couch. It was burned into my mind like a cruel brand, a wound that would never fully heal. Anna finally broke the silence. I feel sick. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Me too. She let out a shaky breath. This can't be real. I didn't have the heart to tell her that it was. That it had been real for months. That the life I had trusted in, the marriage I had cherished, had been nothing more than an illusion. She turned to me then, her eyes red and swollen. What do we do? I wanted to answer. I wanted to have a plan, to know exactly how to move forward, to fix the unfixable. But all I could do was shake my head. Anna stood abruptly, pacing the living room, her arms wrapped around herself. I keep thinking, where did I go wrong with her? How did I not see it? My own daughter, her voice cracked. She betrayed you. She betrayed me. I pushed myself off the floor, my legs weak beneath me. She's young, Anna. I hated myself for saying it, for giving Lilia even the smallest benefit of the doubt. She's reckless, maybe even naive. But Daniel? He knew better. Anna let out a humorless laugh. Yeah. He did. I walked to the couch, the very place they had been together, and stared down at it. The sight of it made my stomach turn. Without thinking, I grabbed the decorative pillows and threw them to the floor. Then the blanket. Then everything else that I could. I wanted it gone, every trace of them, every reminder. Anna watched in silence as I stormed to the linen closet and returned with a large trash bag. I stuffed the pillows inside, then the blanket, then anything else that had touched them. Good idea, Anna muttered. She reached for the wine glasses on the coffee table, the ones we had planned to use for our peaceful dinner, and carried them to the sink. The sound of running water filled the silence. I didn't stop moving. My body was fueled by something raw, something desperate. I went to the bedroom and yanked open Daniel's closet, my hands trembling. His shirts, his suits, his ties, they all hung there neatly, as if nothing had changed. As if he hadn't just walked out of this house a different man than the one I thought I knew. Without hesitation, I started pulling them down. One by one, I ripped them from their hangers and threw them onto the bed. Shirts, pants, belts, every piece of him that had ever occupied this home. Anna appeared in the doorway, watching me. Need help? I didn't answer, but she stepped forward anyway. Together, we gathered Daniel's things into bags, our movements fast, sharp, fueled by betrayal. When the bed was covered in his belongings, I reached for his cologne, the scent I had once adored, and hurled it into the trash bag. Anna smirked slightly. That felt good, didn't it? I exhaled, my hands shaking. Not good enough. She nodded and turned back toward the door. Come on. Let's get this stuff out of here. We carried everything to the front porch, dropping the bags by the door. The weight of it all was suffocating. Then, for the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to truly think. About what came next. Are you going to call him? Anna asked, crossing her arms. I stared at the bags, at the physical proof that my marriage was over. No. Anna hesitated. And Lilia? I clenched my jaw. That's your decision, Anna. A painful silence stretched between us. I don't know what to do with her, she admitted softly. She's my daughter. I love her. But I hate her right now, too. And that makes me feel like a terrible mother. I turned to her then, my heart aching for both of us. You're not a terrible mother, Anna. You're just a mother who's been betrayed. Her lip trembled. She nodded quickly, as if trying to keep herself from breaking apart. I need to go, she murmured. I need to talk to her. I didn't argue. I knew she had to face the wreckage on her end, just as I had to on mine. She hesitated at the doorway. I'm so sorry, you know. I would have done anything to stop this. I forced a weak smile. Me too. And then she left. I stood there for a long time, staring at the street, at the sky, at nothing. Then, without thinking, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and blocked Daniel's number. I wasn't ready to hear his voice. I wasn't sure if I ever would be. All I knew was that my life had just been divided into two parts, before and after. And now, for the first time in 13 years, I had to figure out who I was without him. The house was eerily quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket after a long day. No, this was the silence after destruction, the unsettling stillness that comes when the storm has passed, but the damage remains. Daniel was gone. Anna was gone. And I was alone. I sank onto the couch. No, not the couch. I couldn't sit there. Not after what I had seen. The very thought made my skin crawl. I stood abruptly and paced the living room instead, my hands shaking, my mind spinning. The betrayal sat like a stone in my chest, heavy and suffocating. The man I had loved, trusted, built a life with, he had thrown it all away for a girl who had once played in my backyard while Anna and I sipped wine and talked about our futures. How do you even begin to process something like that? My phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. For a brief, foolish second, I thought, maybe it's him. Maybe he's calling to tell me it was a mistake, a lapse in judgment, that he's sorry, that he loves me, that he'll do anything to fix this. But no. Daniel wasn't the type to grovel. He had made his choice, and that meant he had to live with it. I walked over and checked the screen. Anna. I hesitated before answering. Hey. Silence on the other end. Then a shaky breath. I confronted her. I closed my eyes. And? She admitted everything. Said it just happened. Anna let out a bitter laugh. Like people accidentally fall into bed together. I gripped the edge of the counter, my nails digging into the wood. Did she tell you why? Anna hesitated. She said she didn't mean to hurt you. That she never thought it would go this far. I scoffed. That's not an answer. No. It's not. Another silence stretched between us, thick with shared pain. Where is she now? I finally asked. In her room, Anna muttered. I don't even know what to say to her anymore. Part of me wants to scream, to throw her out, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she's caused. But then I remember she's my daughter, and I don't know how to be both furious and her mother at the same time. I sighed. I wish I could tell you what to do. But I have no idea how to handle this either. Anna sniffled. I feel like I've lost her. Like I don't even know who she is anymore. I wanted to tell her I understood, but how could I? Lilia wasn't my daughter. I had lost a husband, but Anna had lost something far deeper. I think I need some time, she whispered. To figure out what this means for us. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Take whatever time you need. A pause. Then, I'm so sorry. I swallowed hard. I know. And then she was gone. I set my phone down and stared at the floor. I had lost my husband. And now, I had lost my best friend too. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of numbness. I moved through them like a ghost, aimless and detached. I went to work. I forced myself to eat. I ignored the well-meaning texts from friends who had somehow already heard whispers of what had happened. But mostly, I just existed. I avoided the bedroom. I couldn't bear to sleep in the bed Daniel and I had shared. Instead, I curled up on the couch with a blanket, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it was possible to feel so empty and so full of rage at the same time. Daniel hadn't tried to reach me. No phone calls. No texts. Nothing. And somehow, that hurt more than if he had. It meant he wasn't even fighting for me. I told myself I should be grateful. That it was easier this way. That if he had come crawling back, spewing apologies and empty promises, it would have been harder to let go. But the silence was just another kind of betrayal. On the fourth day, there was a knock at the door. For a brief moment, my heart stuttered. Was it him? Had he finally come to face me? I took a breath, steeled myself, and pulled the door open. It wasn't Daniel. It was Anna. She looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed with sleepless nights and grief. She held a small box in her hands. I found this in Lilia's room, she said quietly. I frowned. What is it? She hesitated, then pressed it into my hands. Just, open it. I stepped back, letting her inside, and carefully lifted the lid. Inside was a necklace. A delicate gold chain with a small heart-shaped pendant. I recognized it instantly. It was mine. Daniel had given it to me for our 10th anniversary. I had lost it months ago, searched everywhere, assumed I had simply misplaced it. But it hadn't been lost. It had been in Lilia's possession all along. My stomach turned violently. She had this? Anna nodded, her expression unreadable. I stared down at the pendant, my vision swimming. It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that she had stolen something so personal, so sentimental, and kept it. Like a trophy. Like proof that she had one. My hands shook as I closed the box and set it on the table. She took more than just my husband, I whispered. Anna's voice was hollow. I know. And for the first time since that awful night, I didn't cry. I burned. The necklace sat in its little box on my table, taunting me. I couldn't look at it. I couldn't touch it. Every time my eyes drifted toward it, my stomach clenched, a fresh wave of nausea rolling through me. It wasn't just a stolen trinket, it was a symbol of everything I had lost. Daniel had given it to me as a promise. A promise that, like everything else, had meant nothing in the end. And Lilia, she had kept it. Had she worn it? Had she run her fingers over it while lying in bed with my husband, knowing exactly what it represented? A fresh surge of rage roared through me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Before I even realized what I was doing, I grabbed the box and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a sharp crack, the lid flying off, the necklace spilling onto the floor. Anna flinched. She was still standing near the doorway, watching me with wary eyes. I'm sorry, she murmured, her voice fragile. I thought you should know. I turned toward her, my breath unsteady. Why did she take it? Anna shook her head. I don't know. Maybe she wanted to be you. She let out a bitter laugh. Maybe she wanted to win. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. She didn't win. She ruined lives. Anna swallowed hard. Yeah. She did. We stood there, the weight of everything pressing down on us, until she finally spoke again. I told her to leave. I blinked. What? Anna crossed her arms over her chest, her expression tight. I can't even look at her. Every time I do, I see him, I see what she did to you, to me, to us. Her voice cracked. She's staying with a friend for now. A strange mix of emotions swirled inside me. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or devastated for her. She's still your daughter, I whispered. Anna let out a hollow laugh. I know. And I hate myself for this. For not being able to just forgive her. She wiped at her eyes. I don't know if I ever will. I wanted to comfort her. To tell her that time would fix this, that things would go back to normal. But I couldn't. Because we both knew the truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind looping through the past few days like a broken record. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, Daniel and Lilia, wrapped around each other, their secret no longer hidden. I reached for my phone. Blocked. I had blocked Daniel's number, but that didn't mean I didn't want him to call. I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to feel the agony that had been tearing me apart since the moment I walked through that door. But the silence was worse. He didn't even try. He had made his choice, and now he was gone. A part of me wondered if he was with her right now. If they were hiding away somewhere, waiting for the dust to settle, waiting for me and Anna to move on so they could pretend their love story wasn't built on the ashes of a ruined marriage and a broken friendship. The thought made me sick. I needed to do something. I sat up suddenly, my heart pounding. I didn't want to just sit here and rot in my misery. I needed to take control of this wreckage before it consumed me whole. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet. Daniel's things were already packed in garbage bags, but I needed more. I needed him gone. I went to the bathroom and cleared out his toiletries. His toothbrush, his razor, his cologne, the scent that once made me feel safe but now made my stomach turn. I threw everything into the suitcase, barely able to see through the angry tears blurring my vision. Then I turned to the nightstand. His wedding ring sat there. He must have left it behind in his rush to get out. I picked it up, the metal cool against my palm. He had worn this ring for 13 years. Had he taken it off before touching her? Had it ever meant anything to him? I clenched my fist around it. Then, without hesitation, I walked to the kitchen, turned on the garbage disposal, and dropped the ring inside. The metal clanged against the blades. And then, with the flick of a switch, it was gone. I stood there, my hands trembling, my chest heaving. For the first time in days, I felt something other than grief. I felt free. The next morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number. At first, I ignored it. Then, curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. "We need to talk." My breath caught in my throat. It was Daniel. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the phone. "We need to talk." A month ago, I would have dropped everything for those 4 words. A month ago, I would have rearranged my entire world to hear what Daniel had to say, to understand him, to fix whatever needed fixing. But that was before. Before I found him with her. Before I realized he was never the man I thought he was. I locked my phone and set it down on the table. No. There was nothing left to say. But the words lingered in my mind, gnawing at the raw, wounded parts of me. What did he want? Was he going to apologize? Try to explain? Tell me he had made a mistake? Or worse, was he going to tell me he hadn't? The idea made my stomach twist. I needed air. I grabbed my coat and left the house, walking without direction, just letting my feet take me wherever they wanted. The autumn air was crisp, cool against my skin. Leaves crunched under my boots as I moved through the familiar streets of my neighborhood, streets that, for years, had felt like home. Now, everything felt different. The houses, the trees, the sidewalks, things I had walked past 100 times before, felt unfamiliar, like I was seeing them through someone else's eyes. I was a stranger in my own life. I reached the small cafe where Anna and I had met just days ago, when life had still made sense. On instinct, I walked inside. I ordered coffee, barely tasting it, and sat near the window, watching people go about their lives. Couples holding hands. Parents wrangling children. Friends laughing over their drinks. Life went on. Even when yours had fallen apart. I should have been grateful Daniel hadn't fought me, hadn't begged to stay, hadn't made empty promises. But the fact that he had just left so easily, without a fight, made me feel disposable. Like the last 13 years of our marriage had meant nothing to him. I pulled my phone from my pocket and stared at his message again. Did I want to know what he had to say? Would it change anything? Would it change me? I didn't text back. I just sat there, gripping my coffee, pretending that I still had control over my life. By the time I got home, the sun was already setting. A car was parked in the driveway. My breath caught. Daniel. He was standing by his trunk, pulling out a few suitcases, the same ones I had packed his things into. He turned when he saw me, his expression unreadable. "Hey." I stared at him, my body frozen between flight and fury. "What are you doing here?" I finally asked, my voice tight. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want to do this over text." "There's nothing to do, Daniel. You left. It's over." He flinched at the words, but recovered quickly. "I just need to talk to you. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I didn't want to let him inside. Didn't want his presence tainting the house any more than it already had. But I also wanted answers. I stepped aside, my arms crossed. 5 minutes. He walked past me, carrying his bags inside. I kept my distance, watching as he set them down near the door. "I wanted to get the rest of my stuff," he said. I let out a hollow laugh. "You could have texted. I would have left it on the porch." His jaw tightened. "I didn't want to do it like that." I folded my arms, trying to steel myself against the effect he used to have on me. "Say whatever you came to say, Daniel." He hesitated. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I scoffed. "Oh, well. That makes everything better, doesn't it?" He exhaled sharply. "I know you hate me. I get it. But he stopped himself, rubbing a hand over his face. "It wasn't just about sex." I froze. That was what I had been afraid of. I could have handled it if it had been a fleeting mistake, a moment of weakness. But this was worse. "Don't," I whispered. "I didn't plan it," he continued, ignoring me. "It just happened." I clenched my fists. "Stop saying that. Things don't just happen, Daniel. People make them happen." He swallowed, his gaze dark with something I couldn't decipher. "I fell in love with her." It felt like the floor cracked beneath me. I had prepared myself for excuses, for apologies, even for lies. But not for this. Not for him to say it so plainly. So easily. Like I had never even mattered. I took a step back, my breath shallow. "Get out. Please, just get out." He hesitated, like he wanted to say more. Then, finally, he nodded. Without another word, he grabbed his bags and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. And this time, when he left, he didn't come back. The moment the door shut behind Daniel, a hollow stillness settled over the house. It was done. Really done. He had said it, had looked me in the eye and told me he loved her. Not just a fling. Not just a moment of weakness. Love. The word echoed inside my skull like a cruel joke. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, my hands trembling, my breath shallow. I had been prepared for excuses, for regret, for pleas to work things out. But I hadn't been prepared for his certainty. For the finality in his voice. I had spent 13 years believing that Daniel and I were unshakable, that no matter what storms we faced, we would weather them together. And yet, here I was. Alone. The next morning, I woke up feeling like my body wasn't mine. My limbs were heavy, my thoughts sluggish. I barely registered the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Another message. For a second, my breath hitched. But it wasn't from Daniel. It was Anna. "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "Yeah. Come over." An hour later, Anna stood in my doorway, her expression guarded. For the first time since everything happened, she looked different. Tired. Older. As if the weight of the past few days had aged her overnight. I stepped aside, letting her in. She walked in slowly, hesitating near the couch. Not the couch, not anymore. Neither of us could sit there. She cleared her throat. "Lilia called me last night." I crossed my arms, bracing myself. "And?" She wants to come home. I exhaled sharply, trying to ignore the sting in my chest. What are you going to do? Anna shook her head, her jaw tight. I don't know. She's my daughter, but... I look at her, and all I see is what she did to you. To us. Pain flickered across her face, and for a moment, I saw the woman she used to be, the woman who had laughed with me over coffee, who had held my hand through my hardest days, who had been my family in every way that mattered. But now, there was a distance between us. A gap neither of us knew how to close. She said she never meant to hurt anyone, Anna murmured. I let out a bitter laugh. Funny how people only say that after they've done something unforgivable. Anna looked down, twisting her hands together. I don't know how to move forward from this. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Neither do I. We stood there in silence, two women who had lost everything in the span of a single night. Finally, Anna took a deep breath. I just needed you to know. No matter what happens with Lilia, I don't expect you to forgive her. And I won't ask you to. A tear slipped down her cheek. I almost reached for her, almost pulled her into a hug like I had 100 times before. But something stopped me. Some invisible wall between us. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. She lingered for a second, like she wanted to say more. Then, slowly, she turned and walked to the door. I didn't stop her. I just stood there, watching as she disappeared down the driveway. And just like that, I lost her too. That night, I opened the box Anna had given me. The necklace was still there, lying in a tangle of delicate gold. A relic of a life that no longer existed. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the smooth metal. Then, without hesitation, I walked to the kitchen, opened the trash can, and dropped it inside. Some things weren't meant to be held onto. Some things were meant to be left behind. The necklace lay buried beneath coffee grounds and crumpled paper towels, its once cherished gold chain barely visible among the wreckage of my morning. It was gone. Just like Daniel. Just like Anna. Just like the life I had thought I would have. For the first time since that night, I didn't cry. The tears had dried up, leaving only a strange, unsettling emptiness in their place. I had spent days drowning in my own grief, suffocating beneath the weight of betrayal. But now, as I stood in my kitchen staring at the mess in my trash can, a different feeling settled inside me. Something fierce. Something sharp. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I started with the bedroom. It still smelled like him, like the faint trace of his cologne clinging to the sheets, the pillows, the fabric of the curtains. I stripped everything, throwing the sheets, the comforter, even the decorative pillows into a black trash bag. Then I opened the windows. The cool autumn air rushed in, sweeping away the stale remnants of my past. I moved through the house like a woman possessed, scrubbing, organizing, purging every last trace of Daniel from my space. The suit he left behind? Into a donation box. The framed wedding photo still sitting on the dresser? Face down in a drawer. By the time the sun set, my house felt lighter. I felt lighter. For the first time, it truly felt like mine. The next morning, I woke up early. For the first time in days, I didn't feel the crushing weight of grief keeping me in bed. I made coffee. I got dressed. And then, on impulse, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in a long time. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Hello? Hey, Claire. My voice was steady, stronger than I expected. You still looking for a gym partner? A pause. Then, are you serious? I smiled faintly. Yeah. Claire had been bugging me for months to go to the gym with her, but I had always found an excuse, too tired, too busy, too content in my routine with Daniel. But now? Now, I needed something new. Something that was mine. Absolutely, she said, excitement clear in her voice. Let's go tonight. I'll pick you up at 7. I exhaled. Sounds good. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I had something to look forward to. At 6:55 p.m., Claire's car pulled into my driveway. I hesitated for only a second before stepping outside, locking the door behind me. This was it. The beginning of something new. I climbed into the passenger seat, buckled my seatbelt, and looked over at Claire. She grinned. Ready to sweat out all the bad decisions? I laughed, actually laughed, and nodded. Let's do it. And as we drove off into the night, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to live again. The gym was buzzing with life, music pumping, weights clanking, bodies moving in rhythm. It was a stark contrast to the suffocating silence I had been drowning in for days. Claire led me toward the treadmills, flashing me a playful grin. We start easy. Just walk. No pressure. I stepped onto the machine, pressing the buttons almost mechanically. As the belt moved beneath my feet, something clicked in my mind. I was moving forward. For the first time since my world shattered, I wasn't frozen in grief. I wasn't trapped in the moment I walked through my front door and saw my husband with another woman. I was here. I was breathing. I was still standing. And that meant something. Claire didn't push me to talk, but eventually, as we fell into a steady rhythm, the words came anyway. I saw Daniel. She shot me a sharp glance. What? He came to get the rest of his things. I swallowed, staring straight ahead. He told me he loves her. Claire nearly tripped over her own feet. He what? I exhaled, feeling the weight of it settle in my chest again. He didn't even try to fix it. Didn't fight for me. Just told me he loved her and left. Claire's face twisted in disgust. What a pathetic excuse for a man. I let out a breathy laugh, but it wasn't out of humor. Yeah. She was quiet for a moment before she spoke again. So, what now? I tightened my grip on the treadmill rails. I move on. The words felt foreign on my tongue, but I knew they were true. Daniel was gone. Lilia was gone. Anna. I wasn't sure. But I was still here. And that had to be enough. Over the next week, I threw myself into distraction. Mornings at the gym with Claire. Evenings spent reorganizing my home, filling the space Daniel left behind with pieces of me. I started cooking again. I took a different route to work. I listened to music Daniel never liked, just because I could. Little by little, I was reclaiming my life. Then, one evening, my phone rang. Anna. I hesitated before answering. Hey. Her voice was small. Can we meet? My stomach clenched. Anna. I know things aren't the same. I know they never will be. But I miss you. I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers against my temple. Where? The cafe. Tomorrow? I exhaled. Okay. The next afternoon, I walked into the cafe where Anna and I had once spent countless hours talking about life, love, and everything in between. Now, we were strangers sitting across from each other, the weight of betrayal between us. Anna looked exhausted. Her eyes were shadowed, her face thinner. She's back home, she said quietly, stirring her coffee. I swallowed. Lilia? She nodded. I couldn't shut her out forever. She's my daughter. I had expected this. But it still stung. She's been trying, Anna continued, hesitating. She wants to fix things. My fingers curled around my cup. And you? Do you forgive her? Anna let out a slow breath. I don't know. Some days I look at her and see the little girl who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares. Other days, I see the woman who destroyed my best friend's marriage. She looked up, eyes glistening. And I hate her for it. I didn't know what to say. I'm not asking you to forgive her, she whispered. I don't even know if I can. But I don't want to lose you too. I stared at my coffee, my chest tightening. Could I ever look at her the same way? Could I ever sit across from her without seeing Daniel and Lilia on my couch? I don't know if I can do this, Anna. She swallowed hard, nodding. I understand. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I had lost Daniel. I had lost my marriage. And now, as Anna slowly stood, slipping on her coat, I realized I had lost my best friend too. I didn't stop her as she walked away. I just watched as another piece of my past disappeared. And this time, I let it go. The cafe felt colder after Anna left. I sat there for a while, staring at my untouched coffee, the weight of everything pressing down on me. It was over. The life I had built, the friendships I had cherished, the love I had believed in, it was all gone. And yet, for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't drowning. I had survived. I stood, grabbed my bag, and walked out of the cafe without looking back. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't mourn. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, breathing in the cool night air, letting the quiet settle around me. For so long, I had lived for other people. For Daniel, for our marriage, for the version of myself I thought I needed to be. But now? Now, there was just me. And maybe that was enough. The next morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't just move on, I would start over. New experiences. New places. A new life, built entirely on my own terms. I spent the afternoon browsing online listings, my heart pounding with something unfamiliar. Excitement. A fresh start. Something caught my eye, a small house a few towns over. Not too big, not too fancy, but mine. By the end of the day, I had scheduled a viewing. And by the end of the week, I had packed my bags. The last thing I did before leaving was write a letter. I didn't know if Anna would ever read it, but I left it on her doorstep anyway. Anna. I don't know if we'll ever find our way back to each other. Maybe we're too broken. Maybe some things just can't be repaired. But I want you to know that I loved you like a sister. And despite everything, part of me always will. I hope you find peace. I hope I do too. Goodbye. I didn't sign my name. I didn't need to. She would know. And then, without looking back, I got in my car and drove towards something new. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I would ever love again, trust again, or even fully heal. But I knew one thing for certain. I had survived. And for now, that was enough.